and on and on. I was kind of, I don't know how to say it. I volunteered to find somebody. I didn't volunteer for all this other hard stuff. I said, yeah, no, I think Ben's agile, and so I hope that you didn't have any difficulty getting here to this space.
None whatsoever. I was already a member, and I hadn't been in the water cooler called the water cooler. It's been a while since I've been like hanging out regularly inside Bankless, but I used to be part of the editorial team, and I was involved in some of the stuff that Frog Monkey had set up, looking at governance structure, and there was like a couple of different committees that I got involved in, and was sort of tangentially involved in the sort of early stages of the consulting Bankless consulting entity. So definitely a big fan of Bankless, and have been around for a while, but I've just gotten really wrapped up in Gitcoin world as of late. Nice. So I feel like I'm full circle. I appreciate the invitation.
I know how it happens. Yeah, it seems like Ernest has his coffee and is back now. Ernest, this is Ben West. We've just been vibing a little bit and waiting for that coffee to perk.
Yeah. Well, and so what we did, Ben, was we gave you a diplomat tag.
Sweet.
And so this kind of circumvents the guest pass, but this also, usually the people with diplomat tags are, usually actually more involved in another organization other than just Bankless.
Gotcha.
So, if you want to be known as the Gitcoin person, we essentially in DAO Relationships Guild, which is where the diplomat tag comes from, we have a CRM, and so we can essentially just put your Gitcoin, your information and Gitcoin into the Bankless CRM, and then that way, if anybody in the DAO, wants to connect with Gitcoin, they can go to the CRM, see that Gitcoin's there, and then potentially reach out to you as a contact, and then figure out how to collaborate or use Gitcoin better, whatever their case may be.
Love it. Yeah, I'm happy to be the Gitcoin guy.
Sweet. And then lastly, do you mind if we record and stream this for the education department?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, feel free.
Sweet. Well, we are.
And my question would be, Ben, do you still go by Monkey Flower? And is that okay?
So Monkey Flower is actually the name of a book that I'm writing, and I've sort of used it as a username, like in video games and things like that in the past, but it's never really like a name that I personally used. More like a handle for some online stuff, but not really as much in like conversation with other people. But yeah, the backstory is that's a book, which I could tell you more about if you're interested. It's long story short is it's kind of a Lord of the Flies on a university campus 10 years in the future, university cut off from the outside world on the side of a mountain. It's kind of an excuse to talk about kind of decentralized organizing structures and like ideas that I think are important or interesting, but sort of in a fictional setting that I've been working on for a while.
That sounds great. Listen, I think we've assembled, and if you'd like to go ahead and get started, I think we're about as set as we're going to be, and if people want to join as we go, that'd be great as well.
Sure. And are we already recording here? Okay, cool. So first of all, hello. Good morning to all of you, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, or good evening or good night. So I'm Ben, and I'm from Gitcoin, also a member of BanklessDAO. Happy to be here with all of you. So I'm really here to primarily just kind of give a little bit of a backgrounder on Gitcoin and where we're at with the upcoming round, and then to share my screen and to walk you through what just went live and how to participate and donate on the new platform, which is a little bit different than the previously existing platform. And feel free to jump in and interrupt and ask questions anytime. Like this is for you. So if I go over anything too quickly and you or if you want to dive deeper into something, you got a question, don't hesitate to just jump in. So yeah, thanks for making the time to be part of the conversation, and for anybody listening to the recording later, appreciate you taking the time to dive in. Sweet. Well, yeah, my pleasure. I'm a big fan of BanklessDAO. I've been a member of Bankless since like 2021 sometime. Used to spend a fair amount of time with Sam and the editorial team doing stuff, and also with Frog Monkey back in the day. So tells you a little bit about kind of how long ago it was, given both those folks haven't been as actively day to day in the Bankless space, at least to my understanding, for a bit now. But I've been a fan of what you guys are doing for quite some time, and actually you should know that Gitcoin often talks about BanklessDAO as one of the success stories of early grantees. So Bankless is actually part of Gitcoin lore, whether you know it or not, which is kind of cool to know. Like some of the early funding for Bankless actually came through Gitcoin grants, and a number of the work streams and guilds have also found funding and various projects from Bankless members. So Gitcoin, for anybody who's not familiar, basically started as a project of consensus. It was actually originally a bounty platform. There still is a bounty platform associated with Gitcoin, and then it evolved from there to a peer-to-peer crowdfunding site, kind of like GoFundMe, where basically people could put up a proposal and get funding without the idea of grants rounds or matching funds. Really just like a way to raise funds directly for a project. And it was when Vitalik Buterin and Glenn Weil from Radical Exchange and an economist named Naomi, I always forget her last name, I'm sorry, Naomi, if you're listening, put together the first paper on this idea of quadratic funding. Well, maybe not the first, but the first that made its way into the Web3 space. And this idea of a mechanism to help distribute funds in a more democratic way, to sort of help make decisions about how to allocate funding, was basically an experiment that Gitcoin decided to employ, and I think it was like the third or fourth Gitcoin grants round that happens quarterly. And we started out really just running these grants rounds, like I said, like a peer-to-peer crowdfunding tool. And then the idea of raising matching funds to allocate and to do that with quadratic funding, really started with the Ethereum Foundation as the primary funder. And then very quickly expanded to a lot of other major players in the crypto space who wanted to give back to new upcoming projects. So Uniswap is probably the biggest project that's come out of Gitcoin that people are familiar with, but there's lots of other ones and a lot of kind of core code that has been sort of fundamental to the development of the Ethereum ecosystem has also come out of Gitcoin. There's a number of different proposals and even some coding languages. So, like for example, I'm forgetting the EIP number, but the one that basically made Ethereum less inflationary or possibly not inflationary actually got funded through Gitcoin. Ethers.js programming language got funded through Gitcoin. And many other projects in the DeFi space and throughout the crypto world, really.
The non-inflationary one, Ben, was 1559.
I thought so, but I didn't want to say the wrong number. Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. So yeah, that that's just one of the many different projects over the years that have gotten funded. In total, now the latest numbers I've seen, I think, including the bounties, over $69 million have been distributed by Gitcoin. I think about 34 million of them directly through the grants rounds. And some portion of that from matching fund donors, and some portion of that directly from individual contributors. And really the magic of Gitcoin is that if you donate one DAI, or the equivalent of $1, that could be matched through quadratic funding with like $2, $3, $10, $100, even more, depending on how that algorithm is basically seeing the various different factors that go into the distribution. So really, the idea behind quadratic funding is that it takes power away from whales and larger influencers, and spreads the power of the decision making of how to allocate funds more broadly. The simple way, the oversimplified way of explaining this, is if you had two different grantees, both who were competing for $100 in matching funds, and they both received $100 in donations, one from 10 donors who each gave $10, and one from one donor who gave $100. The one who had 10 donors would get $80 in matching funds, and the one who had one donor would get $20 in matching funds. So that gets more complicated when you've got multiple different grantees, and a larger matching fund available, and trust scores based on Passport, which I'll explain a little bit more in a minute, that can kind of fluctuate a little bit. But the long story short is that that's kind of the intention behind quadratic funding, and the magic of it for the donor is like actually seeing how your donation can be matched with a larger sum of funding, which can be pretty exciting to see, and it can feel like your dollar's really stretching extra far. And for the folks that we actually raise the money from that's distributed, which includes a lot of the big projects in Web3, but also some other funders, like for example, Kimball Musk was a funder last year. Eric Schmidt's foundation, Schmidt Futures, has been a funder. Lots of different kind of folks from outside the traditional Web3 space who are starting to dip a toe into the space are starting to pay attention. And trying to sort of find a way to participate in a good and meaningful way. And Gitcoin is often the vehicle they use to do that. For them, this is an opportunity to like harness the wisdom of the crowd to determine how best to allocate, all or some portion of the funding that they want to give away as grant money. And sometimes they have their own grant program that they run as well, and they also give some money to Gitcoin. And for some folks, they this becomes their whole approach and strategy for how they allocate grant money. So yeah, I mean, over the years, and it's been almost 4 years now, I think a little over 4 years up until the present moment in the calendar. But really with the grants rounds running the way that they had up until grants round 15, that was almost 4 years. And what we saw over that time was more and more rounds being run. So we went from having one big open source software round that really funded anything in the Web3 space, and even some other open source projects, to then that expanded out to ecosystem rounds, like, so for example, Polygon running around, or ENS running around, Uniswap running around, lots of other folks basically incentivizing people to build in their ecosystem, and then kind of run their own rounds. That became kind of the new focus for a while, and then from there we went on to running cause rounds, which is actually my job at Gitcoin, which is coordinating the cause rounds. And those cause rounds include everything from crypto advocacy, with funding for advocacy entities, and issues like what's been going on with Tornado Cash, for example, have been a big focus, for some rounds. We also, within the cause rounds, we've got a climate round, a decentralized science round, a diversity, equity, inclusion round, and the potential for lots of other ones as well. We've also run a longevity round in the past, a support for Ukraine round, and also a round for the some community organizations in the city of Oakland, and during the COVID lockdowns, there was a round run in Denver, Colorado, to support local businesses and restaurants. So, really all kinds of different things that you could consider to be public goods. That's really become the sort of the thing that ties everything together at Gitcoin, is all these different causes or activities. Much like open source software, anything that could be considered a public good is something that Gitcoin is useful for trying to help find ways to pull funding together for. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the history of Gitcoin. The reason in particular that it makes sense for me to share my screen in a sec and like really get under the hood of what's going on right now at Gitcoin is we're just in the midst of launching today, actually, as of 7 a.m. Eastern time or noon UTC. We just launched the first alpha round on Gitcoin's new fully decentralized grants protocol, or what's about to be called the grants stack. And the this new idea is that, like, as much as what we were doing was was quite decentralized. I mean, was being done by a DAO, being run by a group of stewards with coin voting. It still was largely focused around one platform, our website. That was compared to what we're doing now, pretty centralized. The new version of this is actually a set of different tools, a grants hub where people can create their grants, grants explorer where people can actually go and look at grant proposals in active rounds and donate, round manager, which is the tool for those running the rounds to control all the sort of details of the round and sort of facilitate those rounds, as well as this tool Passport, which is an identity verification tool. So that's the very that make up the grant stack. And what's just happened today was we've just gone live for our first alpha round using all these new tools. We have run a couple of smaller rounds, one in support of UNICEF and one working with Phantom, that were sort of our very first tests of this new alpha protocol. And I can tell you that new features and new pieces are being pushed live very, very regularly. I don't want to say every day, but it feels like every day at the moment. So even since those rounds in December, a fair amount has changed. And this is the first round that's like fully being run by Gitcoin as part of our ongoing grants program that's on the new protocol. So there's 3 rounds for our alpha round. Still very much a test of this new tool. And there's still all kinds of bugs being found. So, I mean, if you are on there and you notice anything that, could be better, should be better, think could be different, a big part of the reason why we're doing this right now, the way that we're doing it, is we're trying to give, really the whole Web3 community the opportunity to get involved, weigh in, and help to shape the future of the grants protocol. And, the idea is this is all open source technology. People will be able to run their own grants rounds using all these tools if they'd like. They could even fork the code and make changes or additions or build new features, whatever you'd like to do. And that's really the kind of core driving ethos of Gitcoin since day one, which, as was mentioned, has its roots in GitHub as a mechanism for funding bounties for people doing open source web development projects on GitHub. So the name Gitcoin, as much as it's kind of cute because of its similarity to Bitcoin, and still my autocorrect is trying to tell me all the time that I'm spelling Bitcoin wrong when I'm writing down Gitcoin in many different things that I write. The roots of the name come from GitHub, as was mentioned earlier. And actually, on our previous platform, you had to have a GitHub account to set up a proposal on Gitcoin. That is no longer the case now. You just sign in with a wallet, and you can use Passport to verify your identity and to increase your trust. So maybe I'll pause there just for one sec. I know I just threw a lot at you, and I haven't even started sharing my screen yet. How much more time do we have? Are we okay going for a little bit? That's the main reason I haven't particularly is the need of GitHub. Yeah, that did bug people sometimes, Ernest, that you had to create a GitHub account. And I've definitely had to hold a lot of different people's hands through the process of setting up their GitHub account. It is a tool for developers, obviously, but we've probably onboarded more non-developers into GitHub than anybody else for the sake of participating, but it is a little bit. It was a little bit weird because that was very much the roots of being a participant in Gitcoin. Was really, it was a tool built by developers for developers. And still to this day, I would say the majority of our grantees are developers. They're folks who are trying to build something. We do see more projects that are kind of showing up who are somebody with an idea who's trying to hire developers. Might not be a developer themselves, but more like a project manager. But there's really a wide spectrum of types of projects that have been funded. But GitHub has kind of been part of it, and up until very recently. And I'm happy to say that that's no longer a requirement, as much as I'm still a fan of the use of Git tools, whether it be GitHub or GitLab or the other kind of open source derivations of that approach. It's no longer a requirement to participate. So why don't I just jump right into sharing my screen and show you what this is looking like now. Sharing my screen. Okay. Going live. Cool. Can you see my screen? Cool. Stream is now running. Here we go. Okay, so I am just gonna go over to that screen so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so this is what just went live today. Now you'll see I've already signed in. You'll recognize my username and my .eth address there. Always going for the memes here. I should say one thing I didn't mention before is there's a total of $1 million and 69 cents available in this upcoming round, broken down in almost exactly equal parts between the three different rounds that are running. $333,333.56 for the climate round. Same for the ETH infra round, and then the open source round is the same number plus 1 penny. And I must admit, we did that entirely for the meme of it equaling $1 million and 69 cents.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
The current round. So are there multiple rounds going on right now, or is there just a climate round going on right now?
3 rounds going on right now. I'm just showing you the climate one because that's the one that I'm personally coordinating. Okay. But I can also share the links to where the other 2 are. All 3 are running concurrently.
Yeah, this is great. I was just wanted clarification on that. So they're all running at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. They all went live this morning. ETH core infrastructure, open source software, and climate. So basically 1 cause round, and basically what you could think of as kind of the history of the main round at Gitcoin, the open source software round. And we split out the ETH infrastructure projects, which is just 30 projects, just because that's kind of a pretty specific core need that's like a subset of open source software, but we didn't want it to kind of get lost in the 100 plus other projects within the round. So yeah, all of the things I'm going to show you though here on the climate round work exactly the same for the other rounds. And basically, when you've created a grant on Grants Hub, any round that you would qualify for, you have the ability to apply to. So that same grant proposal that somebody created for this particular round, could just as easily, if it qualified for other rounds, also be in those other rounds. And that's kind of the idea behind this decentralized architecture. All of these projects are being, signed onto blockchain now. It's not just it's not just something that's happening on a web page, but this is all stored on IPFS. And after you create your grant, you're actually signing a transaction. And then these other pages are actually pulling the information from IPFS. So it really is a Web3 decentralized tool at this point, not just in the fact that you're connecting a wallet and that the funding is coming in crypto, but like the actual projects and all the content related to them is all written to the blockchain. So I'll just demonstrate a couple of things for you just to give you a little taste of what you're looking at here. So here we are in the Grants Explorer. This is the page that anybody coming to donate will look at. These are the 50 projects that were invited into the climate round. 10 of them are actually bundles of projects like this one. And I'll just click on it to give you a little taste. So you can see in here the wallet address, the Twitter account, website, the amount of funds received, the number of contributors, and the number of days left in the round. And that's kind of the core information. This particular bundle, is one for verification infrastructure, so things like impact certificates, measurement, reporting, and verification, oracles. And they basically put together a description of all the different projects in their bundle and sort of what their use case represents. And if you scroll down, you can see the breakdown of each of the different projects. This is still very alpha, so there's some things you will not see here. For example, there's no rich text in here, like there's pictures and video, right embedded in here. But a pretty decent experience given how new all of this is. I'll just jump into Passport real quick to show you Passport, because that is one of the first things you'll notice when you come and connect your wallet. If you haven't configured a Passport score, which I actually haven't for this account, I generally use a different account for donating, you can click on this button and it will give you the ability to create a passport. So let's see, if I go to create a passport, it'll take me to this page, which is just passport.gitcoin.co. You have to connect your wallet to it. So let me do that. And I'll just walk you through what this looks like. Give me 1 second to click some buttons on my ledger. This is the reason why generally I use a different wallet, because it's actually a bit of a slower process to do everything with the ledger attached, although I am a big fan of trying to be as safe and sort of intentional with all these things as possible.
Yeah, I think you're the first person in the DAO I've seen you connect, do something with a hardware wallet, in one of our presentations.
Well, happy to be the first. I'm definitely a security and privacy oriented kind of person, and I definitely think it's important to consider. So maybe I won't do all of this right this moment. I'll just kind of give you a sense of what this looks like, because it'll take me a while to kind of go through, but just to kind of give you a walkthrough of what this looks like. Like once you've connected your wallet, basically what Passport is doing is it's giving you the ability to connect a whole bunch of different external tools. Some of them are pretty Web 2, like Google and Facebook, Twitter. Some of them are very Web3, like, do you own some GTC? Have you contributed to Gitcoin grants in the past? Do you have a GitHub account? Do you have an ENS? You connect your Discord, your Proof of Humanity, your Bright ID. Have you collected POAPs? So you can do as many or as few of these as you want. The idea is that basically we're trying to get a sense that each individual who's donating is actually an individual. This is like a mechanism for preventing Sybil attacks, like this idea of somebody using bots or fraudulent accounts to try to affect the outcome of a vote in the Gitcoin protocol. And the trust scores for these include a variety of different factors. Like, for example, if you include a Gmail account, not only is it just verifying that you have a Gmail account, but it'll also look at how old that Gmail account is. Or if you connect a Twitter account, it's going to look at not only how old that Twitter account is, but also how many followers you have, and maybe even some of the social graph of like how trusted the other Twitter accounts are that follow you. And also similar with Proof of Humanity and Bright ID, it's not just saying, do you have one of these, but it's looking at sort of the associated scores within these various different protocols. And the end result is that once you've gone through all these steps, and let's just assume or pretend that I had, I'll go back to browsing. Whoops. Good to know that button doesn't work. I got a bug report. Okay, back to here. It's now loading my passport. Let's just assume that I actually had taken those steps. It'll say you qualify for matching funds. So you can still make donations even if you haven't connected a passport. But right now, basically, it either has approved or not approved. But the gist of it is that you're basically just like taking steps to show that you're an individual. And the interesting thing about that, unlike other kind of KYC or know your customer processes, is that you don't really have to dox yourself to do this. Like you could be completely pseudonymous and have a reputation that you've built, say, in Bankless as a contributor. You've collected POAPs, you've got an ENS handle, you've done the Bright ID thing, with other people that you know from the space. you don't necessarily have to connect anything that would actually connect you to your real identity to get a Gitcoin passport. You really just need to be an individual who's built up some sort of social reputation within the Web3 space, and obviously that was done quite intentionally. And interestingly, Gitcoin very quickly has become the biggest distributor of a digital distributed or decentralized identity. I think that exists. There's now been 120,000 Gitcoin passport accounts that have been created. And this is also an open source protocol that can be adopted by anybody who's interested. So we've actually got a snapshot using Passport now, so you can actually sign in with your passport. Sorry, was there a question?
Yeah, so I guess that's just one of my other questions. So Passport isn't a custom feature that you all built for Gitcoin. We could perhaps require guild members to have a Passport score, and then they would just go to the Passport website to start connecting things.
Yeah, yeah. So and already we're seeing a bunch of different protocols use this in different ways, and kind of the interesting thing about it is that like basically Passport just gives you the ability to like connect a wallet to all these different identifiers, but you can on your end, if you do adopt this and use it in some way, you can basically set up the trust scores and the rules and the access in whatever way you want. So you could make it super easy to be sort of recognized and have a certain amount of trust, or depending on sort of what functionality that unlocks, you could also make it much more stringent. It's really just a flexible open source tool. It's all based on the ceramic infrastructure, which is really what's kind of like housing and storing the data. It's really just like a pretty light user interface that's kind of built on top of that. But yeah, the idea is that it's available to anybody to use. We built it to solve our own problem, but we're also very much aware that it can be useful for all kinds of other use cases.
Okay, so was it this is a side tangent. We should have you back about every other week talking. You can have you talk about Passport and some other things too. Um, so yeah, I don't mean to take you off on a tangent of that, but
No worries. I'm like I said, this is for you guys. So I mean, if you got other questions about Passport or whatever, I'm happy to talk about it.
where
But
the main reason is that we've had a huge shift in how we, I think, are gonna start using Coordinape.
mm,
There's been some some gaming. There's also just been like a decline in membership activity. But essentially, the trust has broken down in Coordinape once we hit 300 people. um,
gotcha. Yeah,
but
yeah.
if it's possible that we could have maybe gate a DAO. We still like kind of small group coordinates. A lot of us,
Mm,
but on a DAO wide coordinate, maybe having something like a passport score could, and some other things could help build that trust as far as like large group peer rewards. It's just hard to peer review other people's work when there's 300
totally.
people in the DAO.
Yeah, you
But
can very much relate to that.
sweet. All right, sorry to go on the tangent. This is great. I'm actually super stoked about this.
Cool. Yeah, no worries. And I mean, Passport is definitely available to play with. There's a lot of documentation. It's all sitting on GitHub. And we do have a developer relations person who like talks to other protocols and projects about integrating any of these tools and what's involved, and tries to help make sure of showing you what it looks like to donate right now, just because that is kind of one of the newer things right now. Please don't read too much into the selections I make here. I'm just literally going to select some randomly just to kind of give you a taste of what it looks like. You'll notice when I'm clicking on these, it says add to shortlist, which I think is a little bit confusing for some people. This is actually a feature request we got in the last round, because previously the only thing you could do is add everybody to your checkout flow. But like, let's say you were looking at 200 or 1,000 different grantees, and you just wanted to kind of like, put some on like a watch list, or like kind of things you were interested in but weren't quite ready to like decide about donating to. So now what we've done is we've created this this thing we call a short list, and then when you go up to this little shopping cart looking little thing here, it actually looks more like a clipboard. With you can see the number 9 on it because now there's the number 10 because I've added things to my short list. This is actually where your short list is. You go to your short list, you see it here, and then if you click select, you can decide what from your short list you're putting into your final donation. We call this your donation builder. So let's say I want to add this one and this one and this one and this one, but maybe I'll consider donating to the other ones later. I then add those to my final donation. They pop up on the other side of the screen. And then I can decide how much I want to donate to each of these projects. And let's say I just want to give 1 DAI to each of them. I can just go like that, click on apply to all. Maybe I say, actually, I'll give 1.5 to this one. Just randomly picking stuff here, but just for the sake of illustrating it. And really that's all you need to do. Now, the one thing I'll point out for anybody who's done Gitcoin grants in the past, and unfortunately this is just not a feature that's been built yet, really the magic to me of this phase was you actually got to see how much you were talking about donating at this stage. Like you'd see not only the dollar and DAI, but you'd also see the estimated matching amount from the matching funds. Unfortunately, that just has not been built yet, so you're not going to see that live right now. You will. There will be ways that we update on sort of what that's looking like currently, using some data visualization and posting stuff on social media. But just unfortunately for the alpha round, that just isn't a feature yet. So yeah, I mean, basically at this point, if I hit submit donation, it would just trigger a interaction on my MetaMask or whatever else, what other wallet I've connected with through Wallet Connect or whatever else. There's lots of different options. And this would be basically just like any smart contract interaction. It's worth pointing out that none of this money is custodied by Gitcoin. The money flows straight through our smart contract directly to the project. So, if you went and looked at the wallet for the projects you were donating to, you would actually see the donation like as soon as the verification of that transaction had cleared, basically. Yeah, I mean, that's really the new donation flow. The biggest difference, like I was saying, is really just this idea of the short list, and just like sort of a more simplified process. And for anybody who isn't familiar with Passport, that's something to remember. One other thing I'll note, just to make sure that nobody accidentally does this, is currently all 3 of the rounds in the alpha round are being run on the Ethereum blockchain. We do also have Optimism and Phantom built as integrations, and Polygon and ZK and others are in the works right now. Also Celo and some stuff on Cosmos. Although very much the roots of Gitcoin are very much in the Ethereum ecosystem, we have done a lot of stuff with other layer 1 and layer 2s over the years. But really Phantom and Optimism exist just because we've already had partnerships with Phantom and Optimism around running rounds for them. But unfortunately, you still see those options, but if you actually go in there and you make your donation in Optimism or in Phantom, it won't count towards matching funds. It'll just flow directly to the grantee, but you won't actually get your funds matched. So I think it's just super important that people know that, don't want funds people allocate to not be allocated in the way that they think they're being allocated.
Do you get the quadratic or just not the matching?
Yeah, sorry. By the matching, I mean you don't actually see the quadratic matching amount, like how the matching amount is being allocated using quadratic funding.
Yeah.
So yeah, you basically you would just be sending them funding on Optimism. There would be no quadratic matching fund if you sent it on Optimism or Phantom.
Right. At this point, could you also show how to check out? That's where I've gotten in trouble before.
Sure. So, I mean, basically, I would just, at this point, now that I've added everything to my cart, I'd submit my donation, I'd click confirm, and then I'd say, 2 transactions, 1 approving the contract, and then the next approving the transaction. So, like you might be familiar with Uniswap or elsewhere, like, basically you have to approve the smart contract having access to your DAI. So if I do that, I don't think you're seeing my MetaMask pop up. But basically, right at this stage, I would click confirm because I've got it attached to my ledger. I'd have to confirm it on my ledger. And basically, once I've completed that step, it would say finalized. and then they would go to this next one, and then I would have to do one more transaction to actually submit the transaction, and then you'd see it indexing and redirecting. So it would basically bring you back to the page after that, just to let you
And
know.
all those steps are on your MetaMask, like, where it says signature, approve, and all that. And then when you click on your MetaMask, it steps this purple dot down through the processes here you have on this screen. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. Yeah. So if everything works the way it's supposed to, it should, after I would approve it, the little purple dot would move to submit. Then once I'd done that, it would move down to indexing and redirecting, and then you'd be brought back to this page, kind of like a little progress bar or something.
Yeah, super. Thank you.
No worries. So I'm just rejecting that transaction because I'm not actually doing that transaction right now. But let's just say that happened. It would bring you back here, and then it would give you the ability to share that you just had donated with your contacts and friends and whoever else.
And can you only give in DAI, or can you give in Ethereum, or does it even accept Bank? I don't know.
At the moment, just DAI, at least for the alpha round. I can give you a little bit of alpha, though, so to speak, which is that we are working on those integrations right now, and we're hoping to return to more like the quarterly cadence of open rounds with a lot more rounds and a lot more participants after ETH Denver and Shelling Point. So we'll be sort of launching the platform in beta, like from alpha to beta, in an open beta, and hosting more rounds after Shelling Point and ETH Denver. So if you are going to be at ETH Denver, there's going to be a lot of discussion there about what it is that we're building and sort of how the community can get involved, and even some opportunity to decide what the next rounds are going to be. But that's kind of the timeline right now. Is we're doing this alpha round, then the devs will be heads down again for another month and a half or so, and then we'll be well on our way to running our sort of second round of the year, which will probably be a lot more similar to the last full-size grants round, which it's worth pointing out we had 17 different rounds in GR15. 4 of those being cause rounds, one being the main round, and then whatever that was, like 12 different ecosystem rounds. So yeah, we'll
are you still running hackathons with the rounds, or is that something entirely different on its own now?
Hackathons are still happening, and they are somewhat disconnected from the rounds, and they have been for a while, with the one I guess differentiation being that often our matching fund partners who fund a round also run hackathons. So when we form partnerships, they sometimes have kind of multiple different pieces associated with them, like co-sponsoring an event and doing a hackathon together, as well as sponsoring a round. But they aren't necessarily connected in terms of their timing or anything else. It's really more just the same people doing different things together and sort of packaging it in different ways. Any other questions about this new Grants Hub experience and the Grants Explorer and all that? Definitely I'll have more to share when we have like an open invite for future rounds, and for people who want to set up grants, there's a whole different flow there. But yeah, I mean, from the sort of donor point of view, I think this is kind of the majority of the things you need to know, is basically just this idea of the short list, what that new user interface looks like, and how Passport works.
That was really great, Ben. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming in here and sharing this with us and some time here. And since this is day one, we can all get over there and give to our favorite projects.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot more I want to learn about it. And for some folks that may be listening to this and um, are may not know, no, can't hear you right now. Actually, you can probably hop out and hop right back in.
Yeah, I can't hear Ben either. I can hear you fine, Ernest.
Bottom bum.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, I would probably maybe he's figuring out. So I was basically going to say for folks that may be listening to this, maybe you're not familiar with Web3. Um, your traditional crowdfunding or platform experience as a donor to like Kickstarter, you would be giving your money to another organization to hold, to pass it off to whoever was, the recipient of your donation. Um, in Web3, right? There's no custody of your funds and also no fee from Gitcoin for you know facilitating the peer-to-peer transfer of donations and the quadratic funding model. Um, and that's kind of the power of Web3, I think.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I got totally cut off from the audio there when I disconnected my screen somehow. I'm not sure if you guys could hear me talking, but for some reason I just muted and all of a sudden I could hear you talking, Ernest. But I missed the first half of what you were saying, I think.
Yeah, no, I just said, right, like, so the tradition, if somebody was coming from Kickstarter and like didn't know anything about Web3, their experience is, that they're giving money to the Kickstarter platform. Kickstarter platform is holding their funds and then transferring it to the recipient if they're allowed to do so. Um, and
Hmm.
then that Kickstarter, is usually taking a percentage of that donor's funds for, providing that service and the platform.
Hmm.
But in Web3, when you're using wallets and smart contracts, there's no need for Gitcoin to hold funds. And it's, with the help of the smart contract, a peer-to-peer transaction between the donor and the recipient once the quadratic funding model has been applied. And then does Gitcoin, does the protocol or the application like take a fee? Um, or it's just, it just costs you the gas to actually do the transaction, right?
Just cost you the gap.
Right. So Kickstarter takes, a bunch of your funds. Um, Web3, there's no need to do that. And we can make sure more funds go to people who are doing public good stuff, right?
True. Yeah, I mean, just for the sake of the one caveat here of like sort of where this is going, is that as Gitcoin becomes more decentralized, one of the things that we're exploring is basically a like fee for service model to support uh, people who want to run around but could use more support. So we haven't traditionally charged anybody anything for running rounds. Still an optional thing, but basically just like if let's say a large entity wants to run a grants round and doesn't have the time or the energy or could use some support, and they just want to put the money up. One option will be basically hiring Gitcoin as a fee for service thing, but it won't be a sort of automatically built-in thing necessarily. There has been a fair amount of discussion about sort of different business models for like how to maintain the funding for the core team. But we're all pretty dedicated to the kind of Web3 values and ideas, and the way that you just described, sort of how different this is from say Kickstarter is something I think we all want to maintain. So in the past there's been like the option to give some amount back to the multi-sig wallet to go back into public goods funding. I think that will probably be the case again in the future. You may have noticed that wasn't there on the checkout flow right now. But yeah, I mean, just for the sake of full transparency and clarity, like we are exploring ways that like basically sort of a range of different levels of service and support that Gitcoin could give to folks trying to run their own rounds, ranging from like totally hands off to, basically like a white glove kind of, we do it for you and you just put up the funding sort of option.
Yeah. Well,
But
you're gonna have lots of nonprofits and businesses, that are like clueless about Web3, but they're gonna see it and they're gonna get shown the platform, and they're gonna want to hire somebody to like manage, you know, their account,
totally,
their presence in Web3, then without having to train the whole organization. Um,
totally.
so that makes a lot
And
of sense.
and
Does
truth be
is
told, we've been doing a fair amount of that for free, basically, up until this point.
Yeah, is there a Gitcoin for the core team? Is there a Gitcoin or
There was in the past, but there is not actually now. Perhaps there should be, but it kind of makes sense to use our own funding platform to raise funding for the team. But I mean, at the moment, basically, Gitcoin, has a token that is what pays our salaries, which is, lost a fair amount of value in the bear, but not, still hovering between $1 and $2, down from the like $7 or $8 it was at one point. So definitely that's there is a runway. It's a relatively limited runway, but it's there. And we also benefited from things like you may have heard of Vitalik at one point getting airdropped a whole bunch of Shiba Inu coins. He donated a big chunk of those to Gitcoin, which is extended our runway a fair amount at the time.
yeah?
And a whole bunch of partnerships with other entities where we've done mutual grants or coin swaps or whatever, which has kind of diversified the treasury.
So yeah, so like Gitcoin grants is more of like a grant funding um, flow into an organization. Have Since a core team, or since continual maintenance, is slightly different than you know yearly maintenance, I guess.
Hmm.
Have you thought about having a juice box campaign at all? And then, kind of, I would just imagine there'd be a lot of juice boxers involved with Gitcoin, and I do know there's a lot of folks that do kind of public good stuff through
Yeah,
Juicebox, and
I have heard it discussed. I'm not sure where that particular discussion is at, but I mean, definitely lots of different ideas that have floated around sort of how to kind of continually ongoing fund the Gitcoin team. It's worth saying, I mean, the Gitcoin DAO team is actually reasonably large. Like, I think we're at like somewhere between 50 and 100 people right now. So I mean, like the DAO does not, like, if you include our memes merchant marketing team, the folks who do the events, the operations team for the DAO itself, as well as the teams that run Shelling Point and our various different events, and the hackathons team that does all kinds of stuff, plus all the developers who are working on these various different projects. And there's like 4 different distinct projects in the midst of this grant stack, plus us on the grants operations and fundraising teams.
wow.
It's a sort of surprisingly big entity actually for running a grants round.
And it's
And
a
I
DAO. I heard you say
Yeah,
So Gitcoin is a DAO as well, not
yeah.
just an application or a protocol.
Yeah, yeah, very much a DAO. The entity was actually born as a company out of Consensus with Kevin Iwaki and Scott Moore and Vivek Singh and some other folks, and then evolved into a DAO. And actually, there's now 2 different entities: Super Modular XYZ, which is Kevin Iwaki's new company, which basically is part of what used to be Gitcoin, and is focused on investing in projects building on top of the Gitcoin protocol. And that took a lot of the original investors and sort of structure with it. And the treasury was transferred fully over to the DAO with a group of stewards and a coin voting infrastructure. And that's who I work for. That's that's who everybody at Gitcoin works for. In fact, when I first started at Gitcoin, everybody was other than the folks moving over to Super Modular, everybody on the team was officially resigning from the company and moving to the DAO. So I showed up just after that started happening and was amongst the first group of people who just went straight into the DAO, basically.
And so actually, so a lot of DAOs I've noticed have a kind of sister or brother with some type of company.
Yeah.
Or it could be maybe investors, they could have a product, they could have a service, whatever. But there's usually it seems like a pretty common model, and so I'm curious. This is a little bit above beyond Gitcoin, but like, what's been helpful, and is there any like big lesson learned about how to collaborate well with a company and still meet the needs of the members and still feel connected to that company?
Yeah, good question. And I mean, I don't know if there's a one size fits all answer to it because a lot really depends on the nature of the entities and their relationship and sort of the finances and all that. In our case, it's very much a separation of church and state, like, very clearly like lines delineated. There is a relationship that exists there, but it's more like the relationship between two totally separate entities than it is like two kind of conjoined twins or something. And like that was done very intentionally for a bunch of different reasons. But really, the long story short of it is like I think a lot depends on how that evolution takes place. Like, if an entity sort of starts as a DAO and then, business kind of branches off of it, that perhaps is somewhat different than like starting as a business and then a DAO branches off of it or grows out of it or, organically evolves in some way.
Yeah, and that's the same situation we have here with Bankless headquarters and the formation of our DAO here. As you remember, Ben, way back when we got airdropped and started the DAO, and there are some now advocating and their disappointment with the connection, and then others of us said, "Well, this is what's been expected because that's where we came from, and that's how it is." I think the ties are still very strong, and we are leveraging each other quite well, but not all people agree with my opinion.
Yeah, well, I can tell you not all people agree with my opinions too.
Such is the nature of consent and consensus. Listen, we're at the top of the hour again, and I thank you for this hour. Really look forward to having you back here again if possible. And I'm sure Ernest or myself or somebody in the education department will reach out to you as we go down the road of Gitcoin grants and look at Passport and look at some of the other ideas that you mentioned here. Very, very helpful. And I'd like to thank everybody else for coming this morning and hearing it. Thank you so much.
Thanks to you all, and happy to be of service. Let me know how I can help in the future as all this evolves, and super excited to see what happens with Bankless in the year ahead.
Well, I super appreciate you for coming. I do know for next season it would be great to have your presence in Research Guild and hear more about Passport and possibly lead to a discussion of if it's something that, as guild members, we'd be interested in, making part of our onboarding process.
Sure. Yeah, sounds great. Happy to help in whatever way I can with that for sure.
Yeah, I figure if nothing else, people will, learn also about quadratic funding, because we are always, looking at grants, to Bankless, but I think it'd be helpful to, Research Guild would appreciate, that would help folks a lot. And there's a couple people here from Research Guild, but really maybe take a deep dive into how the quadratic funding works would be awesome,
Very cool. Yeah, and I could also, if you're interested, like I'm happy to try to bring in some of the folks who really are in the weeds of the technical stuff. If you want a developer's perspective or some of the quadratic wizards or others, as much as I'm happy to talk about it, there's also others who may be able to provide some more insights if you've got more technical folks who are interested in diving in.
Well, if there's definitely any events in, the Gitcoin Discord that we should be, yeah, if I can give you the Research Guild role tag,
Sure.
and then yeah, we'll figure something out for next season. If there's events in, there we go, in the Gitcoin Discord, we can travel. Discords, not very
Love
far
it.
away from each other.
Yeah. A couple of clicks down the column. Love
Yeah.
it. Well, one thing I forgot to mention is we have a series of POAPs for donors to the different Gitcoin grants rounds. And as we're doing different rounds, not just the ones that we're hosting, but also like the UNICEF one and the Phantom one and the Optimism one and all the other ones that you'll see in the not too distant future. If you collect a whole series throughout a season, there could be other benefits. There will be this sort of season of collecting POAPs that our memes and merch and marketing team has put together. So they'd want me to remember to mention that.
Yeah, no, that's also why we're doing stuff with NFTs and Web3, right? So yeah, it's so many unknowns about, what you can do when you do have, a series of collectors and participants. So I'm sure it'll be interesting. And yeah, we're always trying to figure stuff out like that ourselves too in our little projects, and so looking forward to learning a lot from y'all. That's great.
Awesome. Well, happy to spend more time a little down the road, and thanks again for setting this up. And always a pleasure to share perspectives and insights with other DAO travelers.
All right.
Well, all right. Well, I guess it's my turn to go get some coffee now.
Yeah, I think, and we got a meeting going on. Started 10 minutes ago in the education department. So getting ready to go share the good news there and check in with them. So thanks again, everybody, for showing up.
Yeah, and any of you feel free to reach out if you got follow-up questions or there's any way I can help. Cheers, y'all.